Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's me, the Loudogg, and happy May the 4th weekend, everybody. Obviously, we're going to be doing some Star Wars content this weekend. As you guys saw yesterday, it was Friday, with Katie's video in defense of the sequel trilogy. And I edit these videos, I do the audio stuff, and I do the video stuff, and I post it everywhere, so I've seen the video a few times. And, I am on the other side of the spectrum of I do not like the sequel trilogy. I think I've said this before on the podcast, and I'm sure Katie and I will be talking about this soon in a little one-on-one debate, if I had to guess. But, watching that video, it got me thinking. I don't like the sequel trilogy. That is not a secret. However, it got me thinking, what would I have done different, right? Because Katie was spewing off about, if you don't like it, and it's because you like the Skywalker's gabagool, it's a me, a Katie. Like, no. That's not why I don't like the sequel trilogy, because it's not Skywalker. As a matter of fact, I am a huge fan of a lot of things that aren't Skywalker. For example, The Mandalorian, not Skywalker, not inherently. Rogue One, also not Skywalker, not really. The list goes on. I'm a huge fan of the Star Wars Legends book, Darth Bane, not Skywalker. So you know what, Katie? Eat this fist, dude. Moving forward, so it got me thinking about what I do different, because that is a fair question. As a Star Wars fan and somebody who can talk about this world without having to do any prior research, because I've been so involved in it since the day I was literally born. As a matter of fact, one of my siblings' name is Leia, named after Princess Leia, obviously. So obviously that has been something in my family that we've all been able to do together. So moving on, big question of the day. What would I have done differently? And so I think about this a lot, because a lot of my friends and coworkers and things like that will sit and talk about these things, because, it's hard to find somebody who isn't into Star Wars and has strong opinions about things, right? And so one of my biggest gripes with the sequel trilogy is the moments, right? A lot of the moments don't feel worked for. They don't feel cohesive. One of the best things that like anime does, for example, is they really work towards a moment, right? They really cultivate everything moving up. Naruto hitting Sage Mode in Mount Myoboku, for example, that moment was earned. Luffy hitting Gear Second, that moment was earned. That's one of the things that I feel like American media struggles with a lot more. And this is no exception. The last movie where Rey puts her lightsabers in an X and somehow defeats the greatest villain of all time is beyond me. Like, if that's all you had to do, a Padawan could have done that and destroyed the Emperor. Like, that shit's bullcrap. So I do want to highlight some of the great moments in the sequel trilogy, and that being Ben Solo's turn, right? So obviously he ends up bad guy Kylo Ren, wanting to get away from the Skywalker family, the Solo family, and become moves to the dark side. And I think that's an interesting point. I would have really loved to see him as the main character, because he starts in a place of villainy and moves to be a hero, right? And so throughout the series, we kind of see him thinking, right? We see like him and Rey's connection of like, hey, I feel all the things that you feel all the things that I feel, and that's starting to sway me, right? And we see a little bit of that in Rey when she's going through her journey, and she kind of is scared she's going to become the one who moves to the dark side, and not Kylo moving to the light side, and all of those things. And so I think those things are super, super, super interesting. And as we move on, I really love that. I feel like they do capitalize, and so that is one of the moments where I'm like, you know what, that's good. And Ben Solo just wailing on the Knights of Ren at the end there was really awesome, and him pulling the lightsaber from the back of his hand, like all that stuff I could buy, and all those moments were really, really awesome. And so that's a highlight for sure. And moving to some of the battle sequences that involve Rey and Kylo, especially in The Last Jedi. That movie, in my opinion, is straight garbage. That movie's terrible. But the moment where they kill Snoke and where they're fighting, that does feel earned, right? Because the first and second movie, once again, they're kind of in each other's brains through the Force and feeling what each other feels, and obviously there's a flip there, right? And that's where he kind of begins his ascension into being a good guy. So again, I don't want to only be negative about this, but those are some highlights, and one of the few highlights in my opinion. So what would I would do differently? I mean, I think I already said it. I would make Ben Solo, like, in the universe and within this story, I would have concentrated specifically on Kylo Ren. Having Kylo Ren's story from beginning to end is the only really good thing about it. Like, story wise, I think there are other little tidbits here and there that I do enjoy. An example of that being some of the new animals are fun. The music is great. I love Rey's theme. Rey's theme is really, really awesome. However, within the confines of the story, I think Ben Solo's story is the most interesting part of this. I mean, imagine this. Imagine us starting at the beginning with Adam Driver, Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, whatever, and seeing how evil he is, and seeing like just all the things that he does for no reason. I mean, he tries to mirror that of Darth Vader, which I don't inherently have an issue with, because it's like a thing in the trailer, even for The Force Awakens, like, my grandfather, blah, 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 and you see the broken Darth Vader mask. So you can already tell, like, immediately there's something he's trying to prove here, right? As kind of taking up that mantle of the enforcer of the Empire. And in this case, like, he absolutely is that. And he's a little more angsty, a lot more angsty than Darth Vader. And so that makes people, I think that would be a turn off, right, to people, because they're so used to the Darth Vader of just quiet, brute, nothing but power, emulating, doesn't have to say a word, he just does, and so that would be a bit of a change. But it's far more interesting to see this guy who's so far on one side, trying to compensate for something, trying to compensate for the fact that he's evil, right? Really trying to show everybody how evil he is, to then turn to the light side, right? To the side of good, where at the end he helps Rey. Now, this brings me to my next point, right? The other thing I would change is the whole Emperor Palpatine things. Now, moving aside from all of the things that went on behind the scenes, like all the different directors and things like that, I mean, blah, blah. I'm of the mindset that maybe if they had the same director, it would have been fine throughout, because The Force Awakens on its own, directed by J.J. Abrams, is like fine. Like I have, it's basically a New Hope 2.0, and it was just kind of fine, and Rian Johnson doing The Last Jedi, that movie is horrible, and I think it's probably the worst movie in the whole trilogy. It just kind of makes things weird, and it just doesn't, I don't think it does anybody justice. So maybe having J.J. Abrams also there in the middle would have been fine, but J.J. Abrams himself, with all the lens flares and just the kind of the way he does things, I don't know how much better it would have been, but I think that would have certainly helped. And so then, bringing Emperor Palpatine back in the third film, you're like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, is that something that J.J. Abrams was just kind of like, well, this is the best way to do it, and at least somebody will get enjoyment out of this. I don't know who that somebody is, but it sure as hell ain't me. But I certainly would have changed the whole Emperor Palpatine thing. I was really excited to see who and what Snoke was. I kind of had the idea that if anybody's read any of the Star Wars Legends books and things like that, and I guess, and this is also showcased in like Revenge of the Sith and things like that, when the Emperor begins to use his Force lightning and he kind of begins to deteriorate a little bit. I had the thought that maybe Snoke was somebody from a Jedi from Order 66 that turned to the dark side and began to kind of deform. Don't know who that would have been, honestly. But everybody had theories about who Snoke was, and Snoke this and Snoke that. And I was really interested to see where that would come out, and him just kind of being a puppet of Emperor Palpatine, I will say, was pretty lackluster. A part of me would have just preferred for him to be there the whole time, and The Force Awakens could have been the name alluding to the fact that the Force awakened Emperor Palpatine, right? Like, I really kind of, and obviously that name alludes to Rey's Force abilities awakening, right, and not necessarily Emperor Palpatine, obviously, but that could have also been something within the confines of the story that could have been manipulated, right? Seeing that parallel and having them, the Force awaken both of them. Now, how that would have happened, I don't know, but there are plenty of things within the Star Wars mythos, legends, books, movies, TV shows that could have saved him. I mean, we see it in Darth Bane, where the Emperor in Darth Bane literally eats a whole planet just to survive and gain immortality. Like, there are so many things within the universe that could have saved Emperor Palpatine, but they're never really explored throughout the movies. And I think that would have been a perfect opportunity to reset him up, right? To reset up what could have happened there. Since, if anybody doesn't know this, George Lucas did have an original plan for for 3 trilogies, 9 movies to kind of end the saga, right? And go take a look at it and see what you think. George Lucas is 50-50 on his Star Wars films, obviously, as general public would agree, I feel like. But reading up on them, they were a little more cohesive. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but look it up. George Lucas's original plan for the saga, for the sequel trilogy. It's interesting. It's really, really interesting. Within the confines of the story, I think that something that kind of established Emperor Palpatine from the beginning would have potentially been better, right? Because then we could have seen the parallels between Rey and Palpatine moving forward. And I don't hate Rey as a main character, to be honest with you. I just think that she was mishandled in a lot of ways, and she definitely didn't. Daisy really did not deserve all the hate that she got for that role. I mean, none of that was really her fault. However, as a sequel trilogy is now, I definitely don't like it. And all of these ideas I'm just spewing out and talking about and kind of what I would have done are just my opinion, of course. And if you think that these things could work, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to have more discourse about this, because as more Star Wars things come out, people love or hate things per usual. And there's one thing that I think all Star Wars fans can agree upon, and it's that the original trilogy is great. And at least keep that in as your foundation when you go and start talking about things, because people get really, really hated, me included. Katie really pushed some buttons for me for that last video, and I thought a lot of their points were stupid, and I can't wait to debate them. See ya.